If you remember, about a month ago, or was it 6 weeks ago, we spoke about the Tikkun Magefa, and I quoted from the Tzemach Tzedek, the Shema Tzemach Tzedek, a seder of saying at the end of Parshas Tetzaveh, the construction of the Mizbeach, and then in Parshas Kisiso, the Mishchas, Shemen HaMishcha, and then the Ktoires, and then to say Pitum HaKtoires, and then to say the Psukim of Hashem Tzvoi Simonu 3 times, those 3 Psukim 3 times, and then to say the Parsha of, in Parshas, in Bamidbar, in Sefer Bamidbar, where Aaron was in Parshas Korach, when Aaron goes and takes the pan to stop with Ktoros to stop the Magefa, and then to say Kapitel Samach Zayin in Tilim, and then to say this Pasuk, Vayoma Aleim Yisrael Avihem Imkein Eifes Eis Asu, and then to say Tehillim Vihinoyam 3 times, and then Yoshev V'Seis. That was the Seder which I shared on this forum some 6 weeks ago, and during this time I've been trying to do it on a regular basis, on a daily basis. But what intrigued me is this pasuk of Vayomer Aleihem. What's the connection of this pasuk? Vayomer Aleihem Yisrael Avihem, that when the sons of Yaakov are gearing up to go back down to Mitzrayim to get provisions the second time, and they got into trouble the first time, they were accused of being spies, Shimon's been taken as a captive. So Yisrael, their father, says to them, in Cain, if that's the case, Ephoi, well, Zoisasu, this is what you should do. Take from the best fruit, the praise of the land, take it in your containers, your vessels, and take a gift for the man, the viceroy. Ma'at sori, ma'at dvash, a bit of this, a bit of that, the various spices, a bit of honey. He tells them to take various ingredients, various delicacies to take down to Mitzrayim. All right, that means a very beautiful pasuk. What has that got to do with averting a plague or the consequences of a plague? That was really what was bothering me, and I looked up in various sources I couldn't find, and then in passing I was looking for something else. You look for something else and you find. So there's a sefer which I'll show you in the next slide. There's a siddur called Reb Shabsi Sofer. Reb Shabsi Sofer must have lived about 400 years ago. He was a Talmud of the Levush. He was like a master in Dikduk, and he published a siddur, a Medukdik siddur, and the Vada Arba Rotzes at the time made a kind of a ruling that anyone who prints a siddur has to kind of check it against the siddur of Reb Shabsi Sofer. So in his Hakdama, he mentions this, you'll see in a moment, and refers to this Sefer Tzroir HaMoir. This Sefer Tzroir HaMoir, which you have now, which you can see on this slide, is written by someone called Ram Saba, with an ayin at the end, Samach Beis Ayin, and it was probably published in Reish Samach Gimel. So he precedes the Arizal by a generation or two, and this is a Sefer Al HaTorah, the Tzroir HaMoir. It's a Sefer Al HaTorah, Al Derech HaPshat, and Al Derech HaSod. So now, V'chein Omar, if you can see where the cursor is, V'chein Omar, the first line of this quote, V'chein Omar Zois Asu, K'moshe Osisi Li Esav. This is saying to his sons, we are now in a predicament. Well, do what I did when I got into a predicament vis-a-vis Esav. So the Zois Asu is a remes to Esav. Because with Esau, my strategy was to buy him off with a gift. But so Yaakov is telling his sons also, we have now a challenge with this viceroy of Egypt. We're going to work a 3-pronged strategy. L'doiron, we'll give him a gift, l'molchama, and l'tfilah. And so that was the reason why he sends them a gift. Let's send him an attractive gift. And then Lamuchama, then we have the mentioned there, and then sorry for playing up with it. And I have it underlined, yeah. Be'omroi ma'at sori ma'at dvash. And now here goes into Kabbalah. Limdom soid sand lavash, which is a Rosh Hashanah of those 6 items. Sorry, Dvash, Loit. What's the other one? The other ones. It's a Rosh Hashanah which has got a power in Kabbalah, and that was what he was. I guess he's saying that's La Milchama. Let's go down. I don't want to go too much into this because it's Kabbalah. Yes, thank you. I'm just now going down to the second underlining. If you go into a region where there is a plague raging, when you enter the city, the gates of the city, you should recite this pasuk Gimel Pa'amim, Ve'ene Nizuk, and you will be protected from danger. And then he says this pasuk has got 24 words, but this is the earliest source I could find of saying this pasuk, and now we understand a little bit that Yaakov is sending his sons to a dangerous area and is telling them, take this pasuk with, and that's a kind of shmira when you're going to be in that place. So here, this is now what I've copied from the Sefer of Siddur Shapsi's Sefer. So he's got the whole Seder HaMagefa. In this Sefer, whatever. In this Sefer, he has a whole chapter on what would be recited as a segula to protect in a time of Magefa. And so he also brings this pasuk and some of the other things which the Tzemach Tzedek, which I quoted from the Tzemach Tzedek, are also over there in this Sefer. And so he's really pretty much quoting the Tzroir HaMoir. You see here, this where I'm pointing to, what's this pasuk got to do with? So he refers to the Tzroir HaMoir. One more thing about this, and then go on to some halacha stuff, is this is a sefer called Mishnas Chasidim. Mishnas Chasidim was written by a Talmud of the Arizal, or perhaps 3 generations removed, Rebbe Menuel Chayriki, and he has a chapter, I think his sefer, the second part of Mishnah, the first part is more Kabbalistic, like what I'd like to call geography. And the second part is more like an Oyer Chaim going through the Seder, and you've got Maseches Motzei Shabbos, Maseches Yom Rishon, etc. He calls it, it's in a style of Masechtes and Mishnah, Prokim and Mishnayos. So he's got I think in the Wednesday, he's got a whole thing about Magefa, and this is, you see the first line, Gam Yom Be'ez HaMagefa, and then look in Mishnah Hey, and he says the whole kavana al pi Kabbalah. He mentions, if you see, that's the same shame which was mentioned in Tzroir HaMoir, but he mentions the whole cheshbon al pi Kabbalah. You can read further, but that's the background. So this pasuk has got a hidden shame in it, and that's the value of saying it as part of averting a magefa. Okay. So that's something which I was excited to discover and I wanted to share with you. But at least we know that there is a side here, and a little bit I was Megala's side, where it comes from. Right. This I got a question. This is the question how it came. This anorak, is it chayiv b'tzitzis? Is it a hashash, a chayiv tzitzis? Because if you can see this anorak, towards the neck, it's also got square corners. So you've got 2 square corners at the bottom, 2 square corners at the top, and therefore, the practical shaila, is there a chiyuv tzitzis, or alternatively, is there a chiyuv to cut off a corner and allow, and to make it a rounded corner, shouldn't be chayiv tzitzis. Just b'derech klal, in the Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur, about a koldere. A koldere is Yiddish for a blanket. One should make the corner of the blanket, you'd make it rounded. But derech klal, the only people who round off corners of blankets are bocherim on the yeshiva's blankets. I don't know how many balabatim take their blankets and cut off corners, and certainly if it's an eider down, a quilt, you start cutting off corners, is, but let's now read the Loshen of the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. This is, I think, in Siman Tes.
Just a question, is this for wearing in your front garden, this baguette?
Why are you talking about carrying the feathers? Sagt the Alter Rebbe says Malbushim shel Galilos Ashkenazus Fard. So you used to have people wear togas, etc., and then we've got a newer development where we've got Western clothes in Germany and in Spain. Shehem psuchim milefnehem l'maylo l'mato milmato. You've got it's open by the neck, it's open by the chest, and so that's describing our jacket. V'yesh lohem arba kanofois. And it's got 4 corners, shtayim milmalo, 2 by the lapel, or shtayim milmata, and 2 by the waist. Pturim min hatzitzis. It's exempt of tzitzis. Pavos. Mipnei she'ike mitzvahs tzitzis, hu she'yiu shtei tzitzis lefonov, or shtei tzitzis le'achrov. The primary idea of tzitzis is in a sense that you've got the 2 tzitzis in the front and 2 tzitzis in the back. And I've chazed this before, a beautiful word of the Rebbe, I think in Parshas Shlach, in Lamed Gimel, I think. How is the Eibishter Mekayim mitzvahs tzitzis? Eden not the Eibishter's tzitzis. The Kabseinu Yachad Meyar Bekanfes Haaretz. That's how the Eibishter is Mekayim tzitzis. Because we are the tzitzis, we're looking to the Eibishter. Meitzitz min hacharakim, we're looking. That's Mashiach then. But here we're meitzit, and the Eibishter will gather us together on Akushton. That is the Eibishter Mekayim mitzvahs tzitzis. And that's why before Shema, when we say that Loshen, that's why we gather the tzitzis at that moment, because the tzitzis is meant to symbolize the Arba Kanfes Haaretz coming together. Therefore, the typical tzitzis are on the talis, where you've got 2 tzitzis in the back, 2 tzitzis in the front, or talis cotton. Whereas, these types of garments, that the 4 corners are all in your front, you can't really wear it in any different form. Therefore, you could say it's arguable that there's no chiyuv at all. And that is therefore the minig lohokil. Abel kol yirei shomayim yachmel le'atzme lasis keren achas agula. If you are more God-fearing, you will cut off 1 corner and sew it in a way that it's curved. You shouldn't have 4 square corners. So this is where we have. So the answer to that question is it chayav b'tzitzis? Minhag lahokel yirei shamayim would be machmir to make 1 keren cut off, rounded off.
No, it's not a bit strong, that last sentence. I will call Yirei Shamayim. What it's going to be is people are not going to see it and somebody, it's not Yirei Shamayim.
Okay. I don't know how many people who I would associate with Yirei Shamayim walk around with such anoraks, yeah? It's, if there's a situation, you need it. Okay. Good. The next piece in the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, talks about where the lapel, like the sailors' collars, that they hang down and they've got 4 square corners at the back. Those blue and white sailor collars. So that's the next discussion, Shulchan Aruch, which is not relevant to our discussion. That's 2 in the front and 2 in the back. But they're not coordinated. The front and the back are not really part of the same thing, and therefore it's okay. Okay, let's move on.
A blanket is neither it's not on top of you anyway. It's neither no front or back. The blanket.
Yes, but moshel for shatnez, you know that you're not allowed to have a shatnez blanket, and the same thing legabe tzitzis. There's a svara that you should consider it a beged if you're sleeping by day. If you sleep by night, Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch in the Siddur talks about. By night, you should be concerned that you might go to sleep, whatever. It's literally poshet, yeah? Because derech olav is also called elevush. Next.
Oh, is that like Yirei Shamayim? You should do the same thing with blankets and sheets.
So if it's a wool blanket, because other materials, one could argue, are not chayav v'tzitzis min haTorah. If it's a woolen blanket, which is not that common, or a linen, but that's even less common, linen sheet. But if it's something which you wear on, if it's a woolen blanket, it would be Yirei Shamayim would cut off a corner. Yeah. All the other ones are of other materials. So just a second. So because there's an argument to say it's not chayav, it's not chayav, it's because it's not worn. And then you have another argument to say it's not Chayvetitzim in Torah because it's not wool. So then that the two will combine, and that's why most people are not so fussy about it. Let's move on.
Bend it over just to make it, and sew it. Bend over the corner and sew it.
Right. Okay, so a good point that in Shulchan Aruch, it says if you need to make a corner round, it's not enough to just bend it over and stitch it. You'd have to cut off the corner. Because otherwise it's kind of reversible change, which the fact you didn't cut it off shows that you can argue perhaps in the case of a quilt, perhaps one could be more lenient on there, because the reason why you're not cutting off the corner is not because it's just because you don't want to lose all the feathers. Okay, fine. Let's move on. So here we have a question. Someone got this from somewhere. Can it be kashered? So the rule about kashering is, one thing is that it has to be kashered on the same surface where the forbidden taste went in. So the fact that you've got in this grill, you've got the heating elements on the outside, in other words, behind the black, what you can see, that's not going to be good enough to kasher. You're gonna, because if it was used for treif, so then the taste had come in from what you can see, and the fire has to be applied there. Number one. Number two, with kashering, if it's a piece of equipment that would get ruined through kashering, so then you can't kasher it. In other words, even you want to take the risk. We're worried, the halacha is that we were worried that you might not do a good job because you don't want to ruin it. So the general, and then we have another thing about kashering. You can kasher with boiling water, and you can kasher with a flame. When the treif has been absorbed in a liquid form or through cooking, then you can kasher it with hot water. But if the treif has been absorbed without the medium of liquid, then you can only kasher it with fire. And so therefore, coming back to our case, we have here a grill. The only way to kasher it would be to take a blowtorch and to apply the blowtorch from the inside surface, usually because it's Teflon or similar non-stick surface, that's going to ruin it. And therefore, basically, it cannot be kashered. Having said all that, I'm looking at this, it looks like it's hardly ever been used. And therefore, I try to find out a bit more. It's a pity to waste such a good piece of equipment, but fine. But it can't be kashered in a conventional way. Sorry?
I understand that if you put it into a kiln, then that's an exception because you...
yes, that's true. Is that Yossi?
Yes, Yossi.
You're right. But I don't know how this would survive a kiln. With all the plastic handles and all that, I think it'd come out rather flat. Well, that's my suspicion.
But for things that are ovens, Dave, could we use a pyrolytic oven?
Yes. So you could. There is this halacha of you can put stuff in a kiln, and in a sense, because a kiln is like you close your eyes, you hope for the best. You put there's no chance of you kind of interfering once it's inside the kiln, and therefore even stuff which is a bit risky, you could kasher by putting them in a kiln. You could put even earthenware stuff like china. You could put in a kiln, but I don't know what their survival rate is, and I don't have public. Liability insurance. Okay.
Does a pyrolytic oven
count
as a kiln for this?
I think so. I think it would. Yes. It's they are like enormously hot. Okay, let's go on to the next point which we have. So here the following scenario. I've got it in Hebrew, but I'm going to try and explain. We got Reuven and Shimon. Reuven is the benefactor, and Shimon is the beneficiary. That's the normal roles, the names which we give for the roles. Okay, so now Reuven lent Shimon his credit card. It's not a very wise thing to do, but that's what happened, yeah? And so he lent Shimon the use of his credit card. Shimon used it and clocked up significant debt. And now let's say he's clocked up £1,000 of debt. Didn't pay on time, so now this debt has now accrued interest, let's say £900. I don't know what the time period, let's say this is the kind of the way the shiloh was put to me. Now, Shimon feels very bad that that Reuven has accrued this extra thing, but he knows, and that's the pashtus of the halacha is that Shimon cannot pay Reuven back that £900 directly, because basically Reuven has borrowed money from Barclays, and he's got one deal with Barclays, and then Reuven has kindly lent money to Shimon, but these are two separate transactions, so Shimon mustn't pay back a penny more than what he received in the loan, and therefore the fact that Reuven got the money in an expensive way rather than take it out of his piggy bank, that doesn't allow Shimon to reimburse him. So that's generally accepted, and I always, when I'm teaching Talmidim, I try to explain this to them, that if you are lending someone by means of your credit card, you won't be able to retrieve the accrued interest. So just bear that in mind. So what the question here is, Shimon has got two interesting strategies. Number one, Shimon is a Melamed, and he says to his employer, the Menayel, could you, instead of paying me, pay directly to Reuven? So it's not that Shimon has taken the money and handed it over to Reuven, it's kind of deducted at source. Would that be an acceptable method? Next step was, if that's not acceptable, Shimon, there are these funds in various every community should have a tzedakah fund, and Shimon is, unfortunately, one of those who are on the receiving end on a regular basis. So he's got his budget, and he understands that he could ask the director of that fund, instead of paying me what you give me on a monthly basis or weekly basis, whatever it may be, if you could pay off that money to Reuven, so Reuven will be reimbursed. So I looked at this, and their first option I felt was not allowed. Shimon's is working, and then his wages are being deducted to pay Reuven ribis with interest. I didn't think that, but the other one I felt was I was more inclined to be lenient on this, but I wasn't confident. So I wrote to a friend of mine in Melbourne who's specialized in Hilchos Ribis. His name is Reb Shabsi Tayar. I asked him what he felt that even that second method also shouldn't be employed. In other words, there shouldn't be any way that Shimon is out of pocket because of reimbursing, because of ribis going to Reuven. What should be done, though? What should be done is and that was his recommendation. What do you do in such a situation? Because we have our sympathy for Reuven also. He's out of pocket. The answer is that Shimon, let's say, will get hold of £1,000 for 10 minutes. He gives it in cash to Reuven, pays off the old debt. Then Reuven gives back the £1,000 to Shimon. I'm giving it now to you under the terms of Heter Iska. And on the terms of Heter Iska, it's going to be an investment in Shimon's business, whatever it may be. On the terms of Heter Iska, he is allowed to reimburse, to give back more than what he received. So again, kind of wind down the previous loan, close that, create a new loan. But now there's not going to be a loan, it's going to be called a Heter Iska, and then you can make repayment terms however you see fit. That was his advice, and that's how I would go further. Let's go on to the next question. Yes. Yes.
Why can you not see Reuven lechatchila as the shaliach? He's just passing the money from the goy to the goy.
Rabbi Lou, we can see your fingerprint. Is that Bedafka? Chachas Adam Toyer Panov. So the pardon? So the answer to this is that because Barclays don't know Shimon. Barclays have a deal with Reuven, and then Reuven has a deal with Shimon. He's not an agent. He's not like how do you say, whatever, people who are like agents connecting. He's not a shadchan. There's two separate transactions here, and that's where we get into trouble.
Maybe seen as an orich.
He's not even he's more than an Orav. He's a lender. He has.
Barkley trusts Ruben. If Ruben is saying whoever takes this, but he's really just.
And even if it's an Orav, is also doesn't matter. You're not allowed to be an Orav for Ribbis either. Yeah. If your son, by the way, if my son wants to buy a house and wants to borrow money from a Yid, no, wait a minute. I'll have to think about it. But there is restrictions even to be an Orav for a loan also comes into Ribbis. Okay, let's move on.
Well, hang on, why can't he charge him a fee for using my car?
Because it's a loan.
But this is not happening only with credit cards. It's going around. People are taking loans from banks without the credit card and passing it on.
Okay.
It's a whole business.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on. So here, I didn't know what a ferret looks like. They look pretty cute to me. It's called a ferret. And this boy, he says he, pardon? They bite. Meanwhile, they look cute. On the picture, they're cute. Social distancing, they're safe. So now, this boy, he feels that he needs to have some kind of therapy. How do you say, animal therapy. And he's been somehow guided that this is the Chayim Yuchedes, which is going to bring the Toyeles Hanirtze in his situation. I'll tell you, I have to deal with the questions as they come. I sometimes I give them alternatives, not always do they work. But this is not, they're cute, they're furry, but you say until they bite, yeah. I call upon him, see, but somehow he needs to get a female one. That's his fixation for his therapy, fine. I can't argue with that. But there's a very curious thing that a female ferret will not survive very long if it's left without a male, unless it's neutered. And he actually sent me a link to someone explaining the medical explanation why a ferret, a female ferret, if it doesn't have a male with it, will not survive. Fine. So now, Ber de Shaila, are you allowed to buy this ferret and give it to a vet and have it neutered for him? That was his question. So actually, at first, I was, a little bit dismissive, I must say. I didn't understand, but he kept on. It was quite persistent. It was important for him. So I spent a long time researching this. Now let's explain what is the shaila here. Well, we know that for a person to castrate a person or even an animal is written in the Torah. It's for loisasu be'artzachem. There's discussion in the Gemara whether the isur of sirus, which is castrating, whether that applies even for a goy. It's an isur even for a goy. There's such a shit in the Gemara. Now, here I've got a quote from Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is in Shulchan Aruch. It's in Evno Ezer Siman Hey. Here I have a quote from Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Osu loima le'eno Yehudi l'saris behema shalonu. We're not allowed to instruct a non-Jew to castrate an animal of ours, to neuter an animal. V'yesh oimrim da'afiru le'mochra le'eno Yehudi. Litna le'lemachzischar. If some say, since a goy is not allowed to do it himself either, so to sell it or to make some kind of business arrangement is also mishum de'ene Yehudi mitzuva gamkein al iso sirus. Even a goy is not allowed to do this neutering. V'imkein Yisrael oiver al lifnei iver. You are kind of aiding and abetting someone who's going to be doing, the goy is doing an avera. Miu ima ene Yehudi hakoine misares biatzmoi. If he does it on his own, if you go to John, and John doesn't do the job himself, John gives it to Nicholas. So then, so So you're not allowed to cause a goy to do an avera, but if that goy is going to give it to another goy, so that's the way he works out that it's okay. Rather unclear. Let's go down. Now, this is a quote from, you can see it's from Shi'or Metzion Halacha. The top of the Sefer is the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The bottom of the Sefer is his own compilation from contemporary tshuvas. Actually, his grandson is the Rav in Crown Heights, Rabbi Broin. His name was Shlomo Zalman Broin, as you can see the name Shlomo Zalman. Apparently, the Rebbe recommended this Sefer to Rabbi Yitzchak Groner when he went off, perhaps it was to Australia, I'm not sure, but the Rebbe says, to Moshe Feller, sorry, and he said, what was the Lashon, when his Machmir is Avad, what was the Lashon? So this Rabbi Broin in this Sefer generally has a tendency to be lenient. If he's saying it's not allowed, well, it's pretty solid. Okay. So now here he quotes from two Sforim about his dealing with the question: can you do a haroma? Now I'm going to translate the word haroma, means to do a trick. In Yiddish it's called shtick. Can you do shtick to sell your animal to a bird, an animal, to a goy, kedei l'sarsum, that they should neuter it? So he refers to the Chassam Sofer and the Maram Shik, who's a Talmud of Chassam Sofer. Actually, this has a third reference, which I didn't really look up, Ha'elef L'chosh Shloime, which is Reb Shloime Kluger, Shenoitim Lahatir, that they're inclined to permit this, Be'ofen Shebeshasa Mechila Yasne Imoy, that you sell it to the guy, and that the guy should also, you said to him that he should give it to another guy to do the actual operation, and then he's relying on the lifnei de lifnei. So you've got this strategy, this method. When I looked at this, and I first came to the maskana that it's not allowed. And the reason being, even though the Chassam Sofer says it is allowed, because the Alter Rebbe looks at the inyan of Amiru Lenochri as a shlichus. So the Chassam Sofer and the Maram Shik, they're relying upon that there's no shlichus, ein shlichus le'akum. The Alter Rebbe's whole approach in Amiru Lenochri is very much based upon that lechumra, we do say Amiru Lenochri, is yes shlichus lenochri lechumra. So, and clearly, we touched on it 2 weeks ago. It says that the Isur of Amiru Lenochri applies to other Isurim also, not only to Shabbos. So we do have this problem, and if you don't recognize the concept of shlichus, so then he's not doing it for you. But if you see that the yesh shlichus la'akam l'chumra, so then if he's doing it, there's going to be your shliach. Now, then another element here, and that is the concept of ha'aroma. If I'm not mistaken, in Gemara Shabbos, in the recent shiurim of a couple of weeks ago, we came up about doing shtick. And the basic line here is, if it's an Issa D'Oraisa, you can't do ha'aroma. If it's an Issa D'Rabbanon, ha'aroma is allowed. So let's say somebody in Maram Shik talks about Mechiras Chometz. Isn't that ha'aroma? And possessing Chometz is Issa D'Oraisa. So he says, no, because there, you're relying on Bittul also. If you move out of your chometz, so therefore you're out of a derais, so you're in a haroma, a drabonon. Therefore you can rely on a haroma. So with all of this, I was more inclined to say to this young lad that I'm sorry, but you can't have your ferret neutered by a guy, even by this shtick. Then afterwards, I thought about it actually last night and looked it up this morning again, and I got back to him since. This is a female. All the dinim which are talking about in Shulchan Aruch is about neutering a male. And this is the last line which you have on the slide here, talking about, just don't have the full sentence. This was from Even Ezer Siman Hey. Bein be'od bein be'behem chayav v'oif is the issue of sirus applies to a human or to an animal, a bird. There's a discussion whether it applies to fish. Not yet. But hamasoris is an akeva bein be'odom bein Bishar minim potur aval osur. You see the font is a little different. So the Mechaber, Rabbi Yosef Kara, is saying you're not allowed to do neuter a female. The Mechaber says if you do neuter a female, you are not punished. The Ramo adds aval osur, so you're not allowed. So it seems to be very clear that neutering a female is max an Issur Rabbanon. Once it comes into Issur Rabbanon, then I can rely on that you can do Haroma, and then you can rely on, and then Amir al-Nochri and all of these shtick become so much more allowable because we're dealing with maximum in Issur Rabbanon, not with the Issur min Torah, and therefore it would be allowed. Okay.
Could he not have said, let me try to write it, Costa. Could he not have said, I will buy if it has been neutered, if you have a neutered one?
I tried that with him. I tried to tell them do that, and he said that they're not easy to get hold of, and etc. And so that option didn't seem to be available to him. Fine. Right. Let's go on to.
If he gets a male as well.
Yeah, then I have to ask his mother whether she's agreeable to have a whole mishpacha of ferrets.
That's costing me insurance for the house then. You see these things, they're sugar.
Right. On the video they look cute. Okay, let's move on. Balcony minyonim. This is my next question. Balcony minyonim. So I think we went through this in recent shiurim, and we've got the concept of royan zeh zeh, and the source of royan zeh zeh is actually the Mishnah in Brochus, which talks about zimun, where you got two groups, royan zeh zeh, they can combine to one zimun, and that din has been exported from zimun to tziruf to a minyan. So this question is not from London, it's from another part of the world, because we're not so much into balconies, yeah? By us it's more bayit vegan, yeah? Have your house with a little garden. But
There are flats.
yeah, yes. So, I mean, it does exist, so it doesn't matter. So,
The new Ross building has loads of people gathering on balconies.
yes. So now, the question which was asked the following. You've got three groups. A can see B, and B can see C, but A can't see C. So now, when we say two groups can see one another, can be recognized as one group, can you do that more than once? And so you have a few people on different balconies, round the corner kind of thing. Could they combine to a minyan? That was the question. So let's read the din, as this is the top of your page if you have in front of you. This is from Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. It's Siman Nun Hey, Seif Yud Zayin. Im Miktzos, now actually, having said what I just said, it can also be in the back garden, minyanim also. There could be the similar kind of situation where, not everyone can see, or everyone else, but can the middle one who sees one end of the street and the other end of the street, can they combine? This is the shaila. So let's read inside. This is part of a longer discussion in Siman Nun Hey, because Siman Nun Hey is all about, it's just before Kaddish. Shulchan Aruch goes and to the Seder Hayoim. It's talked about tzitzis and tefillin, and then it's talked about a minyan. So to be able to say Kaddish, you need a minyan. So then it starts talking about what constitutes a minyan. So im mikzosen bifnim or mikzosen bachutz. You've got inside the house, let's say there's 5 people, and there's outside the house, there's 4 people. Let's say 5 people, doesn't matter. There's no minyan. Each side cannot see one another. Or shliach tzibur al gabe iskupa toich haPesach. I'm not sure of the detail why he's been so, so specific. But here's the chazan is standing on the threshold, and he's able, I presume, to see both parties. So the halacha is hu mitzorfon. He is going to act as a combining factor, because he can see both of them. The way I understand this halacha is that the chazan is not part of either group. but because he can see both of them, so therefore he serves to combine the two. Therefore, coming back to that question, A, B, and C. Let's say you've got balconies. You've got one balcony on the corner of the building, and that's balcony B, and you can see to one side, you can see on A, a couple of people, and you can see on the other side of the building, you can see another few people. Can he act as a bridge to connect them all? So the answer is, if that pivotal balcony B, if one of them is the chazan, the answer is yes. If he's not the chazan, then the answer is, I guess it's not. You don't see it. It's only the chazan is able to combine them, but I don't see that that B not being chazan is able to combine A and C. Now, another practical halacha, although this I don't have a source for this, earlier source. But actually, in the Kfar Chabad, I received the newest Kfar Chabad. There's an article there by Reb Mendel Bahaba, a big Talmud Chochem, anyway, about halachas, about Corona Minyonim. So I just read it last night. And he says the same thing. A person saying Kaddish. The person who's saying Kaddish, at that moment, he is the Chazan. So the same thing, let's say, for Kriyas HaTorah. Kriyas HaTorah would have to be done on balcony B. And then you can combine A and same thing for Kaddish. A and C won't be able to say Kaddish because they don't see 10 people. They'd have to somehow be in position to be able to see the minyan from his he doesn't have to see them b'shas ma'aser. He can read the Kaddish inside the Siddur, but he has to be able to see both parties to be able to take that lead role of saying Kaddish. Right, let's move on.
But the important thing with saying Kaddish is that the person saying Kaddish can see the people, not that they can see him, but that he can see them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that usually works together.
Because when I'm saying Kaddish for certain people, so they ask me, my neighbors ask me, can you stand a bit higher in your garden so we can see you? It's really that I should be able to see them.
Yeah, it goes both ways, yeah. Kemafurish on the back of the trucks. If you can't see me in the mirror, I can't see you, yeah? Right. Yes.
Didn't you say that a few weeks ago on the Moti Shabbos Shir that in Lubavitch's house, if there's somebody behind the Oren Kodesh,
Yes. That's because it's in the one room.
then he can count?
If it's indoors, yes. That would work indoors. That would not work outdoors. Because there is a unit, sof kol sof, there's a unit called a room, which is kind of joining them.
Okay.
And by Zimun, actually, by Gabi Zimun, that wouldn't work. Dafka, and that's one example where actually the dinim of tzira for minyan are more lenient than tzira for Zimun, that was the discussion then. Let's go on to.
I have your side next Shabbos. What should I do?
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
But if B is saying Kaddish, can C also say Kaddish?
No. What I'm saying is that whoever is saying Kaddish, listen, I don't have a rishon to support this, but my understanding is the one who's saying Kaddish is kind of a chazan at that time. But listen.
No, but if he is, then it's one minyan.
Yeah.
C can also say Kaddish at the same time, doesn't it?
All right, I hear the Shaitaina, and I have to think about it. Okay, let's move on.
Are you talking about two different Kaddishim here?
No. He's saying if someone on B is saying a Kaddish Yosem, perhaps someone in C or A can also say, because there is a minyan happening, so why can't he kind of take a ride with them? Kind of, yeah? Okay, let's leave that. Let's leave that for further iyun. Let's go on to the next question we have. Kriyas HaTorah. Now, we want to have Kriyas HaTorah together with social distancing. I don't know whether we had this discussion about in this forum. Could you then? And there's according to the Rosh, you can only say a bracha if your mom is standing and reading from the Sefer Torah. According to the Rosh, a blind person could not be given an aliyah. There's a sefer called Masas Binyamin, who was about 400 or 500 years ago, and he says that when you have an Aliyah Torah, it's really the Bal Koira's bracha, because he's reading. I'm not reading, he's reading. So I'm saying a bracha on his reading. So according to Masas Binyamin, you could stand from a distance and also say a birchas HaTorah. And I used this years ago in the case of an old age home, where the people, the residents, found it difficult to come to the Torah. According to Masas Binyamin, they could sit in their place, and they could, I don't think you should say Yamoid if they're not going to stand up, but to find a different lashon. Isn't a mechabed ploini, and he would say his bracha from his seat. According to Masas Binyamin, it'd be okay. According to the Rosh, it's not okay. There's a discussion, a lot of this in the Tzemach Tzedek and similar Lamedein Erechaim. At any rate, according to the people that asked me, I felt that we should be machmer and not say a bracha from a distance. I know it's 770. Simchas Torah, Shalom Shimon said you can make a bracha from a distance. There's a hechrich. Everyone has to have an aliyah on Simchas Torah, and it wasn't practical for everyone to. So he relied on the Masas Binyamin, perhaps, possibly. I don't know. Even could the Masas Binyamin is schwach, because why does he need 500 people to say a bracha? Now, just a second. The other thing is that in Simchas Torah Bichlal we're much more lenient, repeating the same thing again. The fact that you have a leniency for Simchas Torah doesn't become Nishta Gans Yor Simchas Torah. Yes, Naftali.
My minion, my garden minion, they said they got upset that you can say the bracha on the Torah from a distance, but you must read the actual kriya.
Okay.
So
all right. Listen.
The person making the bracha has a text with a kriya in it.
All right, listen. There's lots of variations of advice given on this inyan, and so I'm going to give another variation. What we've in our street, we've managed to make that the person who has an aliyah stands behind the Bal Koira from a distance, let's say of 6 feet. The bima is quite steep in a way. Especially built a makeshift bima, but that you are able. I can see from 6 feet away. I can read the text. I might be difficult to read it smoothly, but I can follow along. And he uses a yad. The Bal Koira uses a pointer, so I can follow. So I'm keeping to social distancing, and I am able to follow along. And in that setting, that should be okay. Now, in the Beis Din of Chabad in Eretz Yisrael gave out a list of guidelines because now in Eretz Yisrael the government have allowed minyanim, etc., keeping social distancing. So what they've written there was, you go over to the Sefer Torah, the Bal Koira goes away, you go over to the Sefer Torah, say your bracha, and then you step back, the Bal Koira goes over, reads, you finishes, then he goes away, you come back. And I found that I called up one of the Rabbonim, I wasn't clear. Where does this come from? So it is written in Shulchan Aruch, it's written in the Gemara, that before you make your bracha, you have to be roya mashi yikra. It says in Shulchan Aruch and Sim Kuf Lamates Sif Dalet that before reading from the Torah, you should see what you're going to be reading. So that's why they're telling the person to come over. But I still feel, according to the Tzemach Tzedek, to make a bracha and then step away, I didn't understand the sense of it. You'd have to be standing right nearby to be able to read. That's how I understand Tzemach Tzedek. So I mean, there is a value of and then it's the fact that it says in Shulchan Aruch that before reading you have to see what you're going to be reading. I could argue that can be done by the Bal Koira. In other words, the reason for looking in the Sefer Torah is so that when you open the Torah, you should know where you're going to read. So gearing up to reading. But that's more for the reader than for the one who's being given the honor of having an Aliyah Torah. So be that as it may, I think with this method of standing 6 feet behind the Sefer Torah and you're seeing actually, then I think it's safe. No kissing the Sefer Torah, because of keeping your social distancing and all that. Yes, Rabbi Yaakov.
So, in my opinion, we can't get anywhere near the same Torah. So, two things. If I'm called out, I should say no.
That's your choice. You have there is, I'm presenting you a more machmir position and a more lenient position. The more lenient position says you can make a bracha from the distance. The more stricter position would say no, I wouldn't do it.
You're not poskening either way.
I'm giving you the option whether to take the machmir or lenient position. Yeah. Myself, I didn't have an aliyah for weeks until they changed it to make this system. Before they were just doing it from across the street, and I said, no, I don't have to have an aliyah. I'm not mechuyev. Don't do me any favors. Don't push it onto me. And then they changed it around. I can read what's going on. So then I felt that was acceptable. Okay, let's go one more, or just a couple more points.
I did see a blind person have an aliyah once.
Yes, that's written. So the Shulchan Aruch is brought down that they do give. That's relying on the Masas Binyamin, who says that you don't have to read because you're making the bracha for the Bal Koira. That's brought in Poskin. They rely on that opinion. Yes.
So is Raya Mashakoira by the bracha enough, or you still have to follow it through?
I think you'd have to actually follow along. Just to see before and then to step back, I don't see the seichel in it. Because according to the Rosh, you have to follow along. According to Tzemach Tzedek, which is a third mahalach, you're standing in a position as if you are reading Barabim. But if you're standing back, according to Tzemach Tzedek, I don't think that's enough. I know you're suffering from from this psak, yeah? But yeah, Rav Getzel. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. If you have to, we'll have to work it out. Let's move on. There was an article in the Jewish Tribune last week, and it was all about Birchas HaGoimel. I summoned Daniel Neustadt from Detroit. Nice article, but one thing he wrote there, which brought to my attention, that if a person needs to bench Goimel, he should say, and here's the let's say the Shlishi on a weekday or Shvi on a Shabbos. So there's now Kaddish and Goimel. So he writes that you should say the Birchas HaGoimel before Kaddish. And as you can see, I've got here a quote from the this is from Sefer HaMinhagim. Hamavorach Birchas HaGoimel la'acharei kriya hakriya asmucha li Amiras Kaddish, Yantim bebichos ad achrei Amiras Kaddish, Hachati Kaddish, be'oz Yevorech. So the halacha, this is from the Rebbe, from Tafshin Chav Gimel. There was a case where in front of the Rebbe someone did the Hagoimel before Kaddish, and the Rebbe spoke about it by the Fabrengen, and how he feels that it's inappropriate because the Kaddish should be as close as possible to the Kriya, and that's what we have in the footnote, a quote from the Sha'ar Ephraim, which is a sefer specialized on Kriyas HaTorah, lahasmich amiras kaddish la kriya b'kol ha'efshen. Now the Sha'ar Ephraim is Alma Golis, I think, he's not talking about Birchas HaGoimel. He's talking about Mishaberich. The Mishaberich should be said after Kaddish. And this is now being kind of applied in our situation, that the same thing, Birchas HaGoimel should be said after Kaddish rather than before Kaddish. The Reveld is not fussy about this, and it's true. It's something which the Rebbe alerted. In the Sefer from Rabbi Gurari, Chikrei Minhagim, so Chelek Beis, and Rabbi Yochanan Gurari, he has got a whole 6-7 page discussion about this. He brings from also a Sefer called Yerech Yankov, who also is quite adamant, like the Rebbe's position, that you shouldn't be saying the Goimel before, it should be said after Kaddish. Two more points, perhaps. One is, someone wrote to me after the questions had gone out, he had suffered from COVID for 4 days. He was in bed for 4 days. Does he bench Goimel? So, the way it's written in Alter Rebbe's Siddur, you have Seder Birchas HaNe'enin, Perik Yud Gimel has the dinim of Birchas HaGoimel. So, I'm reading the text. Some say that Eina Choyim Mevorech, you only say the bracha for Choyle Sheyesh B'Sakona. Only if it's where there was a threat to a life-threatening illness. Let's say there was some problem inside or something, like you would be Mechal Shabbos. Well, a Meiser, he says, Yesh Linhoig, that if he was bedridden, more than 3 days, he should make the bracha hagoimel when he recovers. So even if COVID was not life-threatening, I would also say, if you were in bedridden for more than 3 days, you should say the bracha. Certainly, and tragically, it is life-threatening, as we all know. And therefore, the answer is yes. Bez Hashem, when you are feeling back to normal and you are able to say Birchas HaGomel, you should say Birchas HaGomel. One more thing is... Well,
Down asking, I had it for 5 days.
Yes.
So do I, and this was 4 weeks ago, do I have bench Gomel now?
Yes. Yes. And you don't have to be standing next to the Sefer Torah. You can do it. This you can do from a distance. In case that's the next question, yeah? You have a garden minion, yeah? So you don't have to stand by the Sefer Torah to say Birchas HaGomel. The last question I want to share with you is someone asked me again today, could he whisk cream on Shabbos? To take eggs or something and with a whisk, to whisk it up and make it into some kind of whipped cream. And the answer is no. You can look it up if you want to in Pisket Shuvas Simashim Chaf Aleph Sif Lamed. When last week we talked about making ice cream. So that's one aspect. It might be Inyan of Lisha, but even less than that, without going to that, you have also that you are, it's like a moilid, you are creating a new kind of entity, and therefore, no, so the whisking wouldn't be allowed. Someone asked me today, I'm finishing with this, they're doing every Friday evening before Shabbos, they're doing a pre-Kabbalah Shabbos service over Zoom, this is someone in Italy, and could they have someone playing guitar along with the Chadoidi? So actually, as I told him that historically, I've heard of shuls in Europe, that they would have an organ, and they would play music during the Chadoidi, and then at the end of the Chadoidi, Mizbah Shabbos was Kabbalah Shabbos. Obviously, they started earlier, not after the Shkia, and they would do that. But his question was because of a Sfira. So I felt that because of Sfira Soimer, after Lag Boimer, if it's necessary, one could be more lenient about it. And okay, so I wish you with that. I'll leave you. I don't have a guitar, so I can't.
Weren't the shuls with organs the modern shuls?
They were the Chor shuls. They were like the cathedral type synagogues, which the Rebbe Rashab, when he was in Rome, I think he didn't want to step into that shul. But they did exist, and they kept a Shulchan Aruch to a level, and yeah, I mean that's where they talk about the Chazonim with long hair and with canonicals, etc. Yeah, I'll call upon him, Messiahim B'Tov, whisk your cream before Shabbos, and have a wonderful Shabbos, and don't forget to...
Whisking.
Huh?
Whisking of vinaigrette. To mix it.
You know what? Call me up separately, and let's wind up the shir, and we wish everyone good Shabbos, and I'll take calls till Shabbos, yeah?
Shabbos.
Or till I say Mizmah Shir Yom Shabbos. Okay. Call to Shabbos. Reb Naftali, please send me the recording, yes?